Welcome to Confessions of a Youth Worker, the podcast that lifts the lid on the inspiring, challenging and often untold stories from the world of youth and community work. I'm Sabrina Dennis, CEO of First Class Foundation, and from where I've sat over the last few years, I've seen the incidents of knife crime, gun crime and more tragedy and loss than I could have ever imagined. Over the last 2 years, youth violence has increased by 13% and drug-related offences by 52%, making youth violence a core priority for local police. In each episode, I'll be diving into the heart of the work that is shaping the future of our communities and the lives of young people everywhere. This is Confessions of a Youth Worker. Welcome back to Confessions of a Youth Worker. This is episode 3, where we are joined by some absolutely magnificent special guests. But before we get to that, we're here at CFC Studios in the heart of the West Midlands, and I'm next to a little bit of an industrial unit, so if you do hear some extra sounds, just ignore it, okay? Thank you. So right, let's move on. Welcome, guys, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so proud and pleased to have you join us today. I'm going to introduce you all. So first, on my right, it's the Reverend Robin Thompson, the Executive Director and Co-Founder of Bringing Hope, a Christian charitable organisation working to transform and reform lives and communities influenced and impacted by antisocial behaviours and serious crime. To my left, on the far end, it's Reverend Dr. Carver Anderson, a practical theologian and social scientist. He's also a qualified social worker with over 38 years of experience at practitioner and senior management level, working with children, young people and families in deprived neighbourhoods. He's also an executive director and co-founder of the Bringing Hope charity. On my right, I have Sharon Goodridge Milford of Goodridge Milford Funeral Directors. Sharon was the first African Caribbean female undertaker in the West Midlands. And to my left, I am joined by Minister Nathan Dennis, who's also a member of the Black Jackets team from First Class Foundation. That was a mouthful. Welcome. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. Now, the topic is a real tough topic today, but I felt that it was important that we went down the road of what can happen at the very worst end when it comes to youth violence and serious crime, especially in our communities. We are in Birmingham in the West Midlands, where we see spikes of youth violence. We see spikes of knife crime, of gun crime. We see spikes of poverty, people living in disenfranchised environments, and some people would say hard to reach, hard to access, hard to contact young people. As people that work within the community and have served the community for a long time, I don't even know how many years we have. We probably have to try and combine that up at the end, but we've got hundreds of years of experience here around the table. I just felt like it was important to really lift the lid on some of the things that happen, and also explore in a bit more in a bit more detail what it is that you guys do. So today's theme is the real deep end of youth violence and the impact of loss on our community. The first question though, and it's open, this is a conversation, feel free to jump in. There are no rules other than that you contribute, that's it. Is what does the role of a youth worker mean to you? So anyone can go first.
I can kick off if you want.
Go ahead.
Because I was one some 45 years ago.
Wow.
On Lozells Road, 244 Lozells Road.
Yeah.
So the role of a youth worker is to literally be relatable to young people of whichever race, creed, church, unchurch, bad, good, indifferent. It's relational engagement. Why? For their welfare, well-being, and their betterment. I put a full stop there. That's what I would say.
Maybe like a drop the mic moment, because that just was a beautiful.
Now, can we
just applaud the 5 years? Before we go any further.
That's older than me. I just like to add.
Wow. I mean, that is sensational.
Don't chat to me.
Don't know, And that's what I love about this, and how it's important to hear the voices and the stories and the history and the impact, because these stories aren't going to be told unless we create platforms to be able to do it. So firstly, before we even get to the next bit, thank you.
That's
because 45 years and you're still doing stuff. You never just retreat and say, I've done my life, There must have been times when you felt like, I've had enough.
100%.
Yeah.
Wanted to give up.
Yeah.
Young people started and you think they're doing okay and they relapse.
Yeah.
You wanted to knock them out.
That's
serious. That's real
true.
talk.
Yeah. It's real.
But for me, as a man of faith, a Christian faith, I have literally asked God, look, please keep me on this trajectory. So yes, I've wanted to give up at times, but I haven't.
Phenomenal. Thank you. What's a youth worker mean to you? Anyone else? I know that's hard to follow, but follow.
You see, for me, you have official youth workers and you have unofficial. So let me come from the unofficial route and meet Carver half Don Lazarus. Obviously I ain't got the ears. So we play with each other. But what I mean by that is my experience, or what I see a youth worker to be, is someone who's got a heart for the youths. And yes, there's the qualification route, but I remember in my upbringing in the ends and the street and in our time, there were unorthodox youth workers. There were Rasta that you couldn't, if you put a litter on the floor, you pick up the song. There was unofficial, and when you look back at the definition, even what Carver's described, you can understand they were doing youth work according to the road and the street and the ethical aspect of it. There's a lot of people think that when we're out there and we're growing up in a particular way, that certain things are not happening, and it was.
Yeah.
So a youth worker has got to be someone who has empathy. There still had to be values that were attached to those that were out there who were classed as hard to reach in them days. So youth work in principle is that you got to have empathy, you got to have passion, and you got to have desire to work with young people.
I love that. Desire to work with young people. I guess you can't say you don't like young people and want to be a youth worker then. It's not going to really work. No, seriously, we've had people come to us and I guess it's like the glamorization of it. It's like, but really when you pin them down and sort to them, they've never had a conversation with a young person, and actually I don't think they like them that much anyway. So it's interesting. I love that. Sharon, come to you.
Okay. I will be very honest with you. Obviously, as a female growing up, didn't really have any experience of a youth worker and having any involvement with youth workers. But as I became older and then had my children, I have 3 sons, and I remember that the school holidays was always a little bit difficult, as having 3 boys, thinking to yourself what you're going to do with them this holiday. So the father of my 3rd son, one of the school holidays, said to me, well, there's a club that they can go to, and your older sons can go to there. And I says, yeah, okay. So anyway, but I was thinking, who's going to look after them? Obviously doing this is my baby, who am I going to leave them with, and all of that and all of that. And then I remember going over to the club where they were having the school holiday sessions, and out walks, without being rude, a big Rasta guy, and I says, good. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm just sitting here and waiting. I've got my sons, I've got to bring them to the club. Who y'all look for? I says, I'm bringing them to the club. And he says, well, I'm the youth worker. But that he did, and then all of a sudden that just broke the ice.
Okay.
And I say that to say straight away, that broke the ice, not just for my sons and who was going to look after them, but for me as a parent, leaving my sons in the hands of this gentleman who has, in fact, almost 20 something years later, still in my life and my children's life. So it's that sense of security. It's that sense of knowing that at the end of the day, that this was, and going back to as what Dr. Carver and what Pastor Robin has said, being a youth worker isn't something that you clock on at 9 o'clock, clock off at 5 o'clock. They've been there throughout. I see people that, more than tell you about when you talk to them, 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone goes. They get up, they don't just talk to somebody on the phone, they get up out their bed and they go to. So for me, it's about really understanding that this is somebody who genuinely has got somebody else life in their hands if it comes to it, but actually not just taking their job as a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. So it's really, really integral that whoever that youth worker is that is out there working in and amongst the community makes themselves available and makes themselves able to know that they are respected. And I think we do need to just make them know that they are respected and that they ultimately we need them. We genuinely need them.
I love what you said about the length of time that individual has been in your son's life. So that distance traveled, like they'd have seen them through every phase and stage.
Absolutely.
Ups, downs, rounds,
Absolutely.
everything, and how instrumental they've almost become another family member without even realizing it. And for us, I guess, as parents, as mums in particular, you're very conscious of who you have around your kids.
Absolutely. That was my biggest fear.
Yeah. So like you said, to actually give the youth workers credit because they're doing things, they're standing in the gap for when we're not there sometimes.
Yeah. Very much so.
Phenomenal.
For me, is a youth worker is someone that has like a young person's best interest at heart, and there to serve and support them and help them to get out of difficult situations, find their purpose, find their fit in life. It's almost like being a professional friend.
A professional friend. We've had so many different terminology so far, but I think that probably is one of my favourite. We've had trusted adult, which sounds a bit like services, statutory services, but a professional friend that's trusted, that's got the heart of.
But I think it's interesting because I think Robin triggered a wider conversation. I think in the context of where we work, there's a difference between statutory youth work and community-based youth work that's coming from within, whereby the community have seen an issue and they're responding to it just out of love, out of our culture, or out of our heritage as African and Caribbean people. And then there's a statutory service perspective that are always, which is important, the whole safeguarding, planning, and it's trained in a particular way. And I think there's a space for both, but they are different.
They are, because you've got to be able, from a community positioning, to sometimes go into the shadows. And what I mean by that is that you will do the outer hours, the early mornings. You will go to places that probably, as a statutory employee, you can't go. And just meet them where they are, because you got to meet them wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know, there's shifts now to have more street-based or urban youth workers, but going back to when we were young, and then we were the young but older ones, there weren't the youth workers like that. They were bound by restrictions. So we've got to have everything in the toolbox.
You know what triggers is from the Black Jackets context, which has been interesting. So when we was initially activated, we were just doing what we was doing in our best approach. But obviously, because we started to get involved with high profile situations, which then we obviously working with yourselves, Sharon and others. So when we're doing Black Jacket stuff, we have to be in spaces and places, just like Bringing Hope, where like technically you're going to see things, smell things that if the system's seen it, they'll look at it as like ridiculously high risk. And what was interesting was how like some of the stuff that we was doing, when it's filtered through the lens of statutory services, like, oh my God, that was a bit risky. Why did you do that? Why did you do this? But we're coming from a community lens, so how we risk assess and do things is different.
I think just picking up what Nathan is saying, every young person is a member of someone's family.
Absolutely.
Let's humanize this for me.
Yeah.
Every young person, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, and they're struggling, there's someone's son or daughter.
That's right.
And I developed a framework called preconception context, meaning before this child came as a baby, you know, what Sharon's saying, she's looking after her 3 sons. They were children. You birthed them. But before they came into this world, you had a life.
Yeah.
So they came into your context, and now you're trying for the first 7 years, you know, which is a crucial years. You're trying to support them, love them, care. But every single child that we're going to talk about later on, who may have passed tragically, was someone who was so loved, held, breastfed, changed nappies, all of that. But then from birth to that tragic situation, which we're going to talk about, those young people, what is it that's taken them down a road that we're going to talk about for you know, the death?
Wow. Absolutely. Every child, every young person is a member of someone's family. I think where we are now is a really good point, a really good time to kind of bring the context in to the deeper conversation that we want to have, because we've talked about a youth worker, we've talked about young people, and it's clear that everybody here is passionate about preserving life, saving lives, and enabling young people's lives to thrive. But Nathan, I want to come to you first, because I feel that the Black Jackets, the work that you guys do and how you engage with the community will kind of set the context and the story as to why we're even here talking about loss and about loss of life. So when we're talking about loss from youth violence in particular, what are some of your experiences or learning from managing the grief process of that for young people? And you can do that through a story if that's easier.
Yeah, I think my first learning is actually with Bringing Hope with Robin, a young man who was quite known in our city, was stabbed and died after planning to be the hero that was trying to save their friend. And I remember being in a room called the lounge at our church, and we was helping the family prepare for the funeral, and we was thinking about the whole order of service, thinking about how to make it flow, to keep because you're gonna have dips of emotion, then you need to put the energy back in. So I learned all of that, to understand how that you need to be aware of moments where it's gonna really be hard, and then how you can try and pick things up. And I think from a Black Jackets perspective, it's been horrible. That's the truth. It's horrible work. Yes, God has given you the strength to do it, but you're working with young people who are in deep trauma because a death's happened, everyone's lost, parents are hurt, devastated, young people are devastated, and then you've got to work with different people around the table to try and support best the family and young people.
Thank you. Reverend Dr. Carver, question back to you. When you're thinking about times, and I know for us in this context, there's been many an occasion when we've worked together, especially you and Nathan and the Black Jackets team, around losing a young person. But can you tell me some of those key experiences from your lens?
Of course. Now, having dedicated many babies who then grow to be teenagers, young people. So there's something about a relationship with some that I know. Seeing them laugh, joke, hug, firms. That's a real, tangible person that I've developed a relationship with. Now, when someone tragically dies, whether it's gun, knife, brick, whatever it is, that person will never come back. So that total separation from their humanity is painful. I've cried at many funerals I need to humanize this because I'm the Reverend Doctor, I'm the pastor, and where Robin and I may be involved in, and Sharon in doing the funeral, but I'm bawling.
Absolutely.
Why am I crying? Because this person is not going to come back to friends, mom, dad, uncle, and say, hey, I'm here. So firstly, I have to acknowledge my own emotion in this. That's the first thing I do.
Yeah.
I feel pain.
Yeah.
And when I engage with any family, I'm telling them, I feel really pained. I know it's not my child, but it is my child, so to speak.
Yeah.
So my experience is to be relational. And even if it's in silence, I am sitting down in silence because of love.
Yeah.
So don't try to pretend anything. Be the real deal. That's what Carver Anderson does. The real deal. Go in, whether I go with a bag of grocery, I go with something,
patties.
some patties,
it's real.
something, because people will be at the house.
Absolutely.
Don't come with your long hand.
That's right.
right.
But then be mindful about the young people that are around this. If it's a conflict situation that this person died in, be so mindful that it can kick off anytime elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Whether in prison, on the road, elsewhere. So I think the experience for me is firstly to assess the situation. Secondly, to engage with the immediate family who want to say something, want to talk. I always do my best to bring this person humanly in their space.
You know, for me, it's that mama cry from the belly.
Pit of the belly.
So one,
Yeah.
And when you hear that,
come on,
Yeah.
real one.
Poor Josh.
Sorry, Josh.
you know, this is real thing.
It's true, but it's true.
It's true
That's the-
because when you were
Really?
talking
Of
and you
course.
know who I'm talking
Of
about.
course, of course.
And you know who I'm talking about. When that scream comes and you're thinking, okay, and everybody's in the space. If you can't relate, then don't say nothing. Straight. And if you're going to speak, you got to speak from an authenticness where they will look and say, well, Pastor, what? Why? Who? How? If you don't know, say, I don't know. What little bit you know, talk from that. And that cry stays with me, because that grounds me, because having either to be in that space then when everybody is silent. I've been in spaces where everybody's around and that mommy said, tell me what happened to my son. And everyone's looking to you. Don't look at me. You don't need to tell mommy what happened to our son. So these are real moments that help to shape your character of someone that in the role pastorally, you have to go in there and absorb all of this. You have to absorb it. This is deep because, as Carver says, that person ain't coming back.
What I think as well, just observation, sorry, just as Carver and Robin is talking, and even what you guys and Sharon from the funeral director's perspective has taught me being around you is what you were just saying about the humanizing our community and removing labels. That's something that all of you and what I've learned from you guys is big. Like, what's so interesting is that, like, many times you can work with a family, but from a statutory lens, the way they look on paper is like, it's the worst.
Yeah, totally different.
But
It's not a person.
when we're working, it's like it's your son, it's family, it's human, like, and I think that's important as well for context as well. I don't know how you feel about that.
I understand statutory context, and in that lens, and you're using the term lens, which is go to the multifaceted lens. But when you're coming from your community, and depending which part of the community you're upbringing, you can't put on, well, I'm a youth worker from youth service today, or you got to put on you. And you. So when we say non-judgmental, it's got to be from the core, because that could be me. That could be anybody in my family at any moment. You know what I mean? So that, for me, is the humanizing. They're human beings, and as Carver says, you've got to make them become center of this, which is the journey you're going to walk with that family on.
Can I ask a question before because I know where we're going, and I'm happy, I'm excited that we're getting in it. When a mother says to you, tell me what happened to my son, and you know what happened to her son, how do you answer that?
I always firstly say, Mommy, how are you? So hear the cry. Robin said, we've been there when the guts crying. Sometimes you have to hold the mom. Or I always get someone else to hold her. Okay, because there's a gender issue here, possibly. So it's important when she asks that question, you have to say, Mommy, you know that I know he's not coming back. So you can't just put everything there. You can't just go in.
Because that would be wrong.
You cannot just go in. You have to absorb that question and say, Mommy, let us talk about it after. But you know, right now, there's shock that you acknowledge everything that's happening with Mommy. Or brother, or sister, or uncle, or auntie, or daddy. Anybody that's there, there is, the cycling psychology about shock. And unbelief, disbelief. Is he gone? I want to go to the morgue now. Take me to him now.
Denial.
Denial.
Seven stages.
The seven stages, absolutely. Yeah. So I would say it's not the time just to say then, but you hear the question and you hold the question.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
You hold the question. I said, Mommy, we'll talk about this, but I know now you are really in pain and you are going through, and I know he's not coming. Acknowledge he's not coming back.
Yeah.
And let us hold that together.
Yeah.
It's a painful thing because there's no script sometimes.
No, and every scenario, every situation is different.
It's different.
Every single time, no matter because I think, and the important thing about this is that the media and the wider society would say, oh, it's just another child that's lost to youth violence in a particular way. But everybody's different. Every scenario is different. Everyone's coming from a family. They're responding in a different way. Some people, they're never ever going to recover ever. I felt that important to ask that question because I think that's the point. People just don't get it in that time, in that moment when you're there holding that family together and they want to know the truth. The delivery, the timing, the sensitivity is incredible. Yeah. And you have to be more than empathetic. You have to be more than skilled and qualified to do that. You have to love people.
Can I just, there's something before Sharon comes in about being a man of faith.
Yeah.
I want to bring that in because I don't go in as a psychologist. I go in as a man of faith because 99% of the young people will go through a spiritual ritual, prayer, and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes I just hold a mom and say, Mommy, and I say, God, we're here now and we don't know what to say. Yeah. I'm saying to God, I don't know what to say. Yeah. I don't know how to absorb this. So I am literally vulnerable to myself before God to say, God, this is so tragic.
This is
and
horrible.
sometimes I shout in the atmosphere, God!
You just triggered the thought that we actually have to humanize ourselves to the
Come
people
on.
that we're supporting.
That's right.
Because sometimes they think that we are superhero, and I think I've used that as, not to say a strategy, but as a method that sometimes when I'm praying with a family is to like actually
I'm
confess in the prayer that, Lord, we don't know what to do.
Yeah. Right.
But we're asking for you for help.
Yeah.
And it's all right.
That's good.
That's
It's all
good.
right to do that. Because you're showing I'm a human being.
This is it.
And that without God, whatever your context of God is, because remember, in that space
Yeah.
can be different experiences, but as the pastor man or the God man I come now, I don't know, but I'm relying on a greater power. And that's so important as you go, because you're going on that journey.
Of course.
You know, if we're gonna go in deep,
going.
this is where Sharon comes in, because we're going on a journey. It's not, sadly, our loved one passes and they get buried tomorrow. There is a time period, and it's that journey, and that's what makes it. It's no script, because you don't know how people are gonna respond.
Absolutely. And I think I'm so glad that you've all said God and my faith, because we're not robots.
No.
You cannot do this job and this work in this particular way without, for me personally, without the presence of God in your life. There's just, to me, there's no way. So Sharon, I'm coming to you now. I'm coming to you now. I've had conversations with you. We've chatted on the phone, and I guess I've been in different places and spaces with this stuff. I think one reason why I called you is I said, I know what I'm really sick of. I think it was the GoFundMes that I'd see roll up and pop up when we lost a child. A family loses a child in a tragic way, and there's no cover for them. There's no protection for them. There's no insurance or anything. And then there's just loads of elements that then fall into it, that have to come into play at a time when you are at your most vulnerable, when you're in shock, disbelief, denial. As a undertaker, funeral director, girl, I mean, lady, I don't know
That's okay.
how you do it, and with so much grace and with so much sensitivity and kindness. I firstly tip my hat to you, but how? Tell us the part you play and the things that you do for our communities in these situations that they get into.
Thank you. I will take you back a little bit with regards to how I believe that myself and my company have evolved to be able to be honoured to serve the community the way we do. My first experience, even before I opened my company, which is now over 13 years ago, was with my late father, who many moons ago had a funeral directors company. And I'm talking well over 30 years ago was my very first experience of knowing somebody had passed at the hands of somebody else. That's how I like to put it. And I will be honest with you, it registered, but it didn't register. And I think that was partly because, I think at that stage it was partly because my children, and at that time I only had two, were very, very, very young, literally a baby and another a toddler. So not being ignorant, we said we're going to keep it real.
Yeah,
It
man.
didn't register.
Yeah.
Didn't register. Then obviously go forward now, 2011, and in the month of literally about 2 months after I opened my company, had a phone call to say a young man had sadly lost his life at the hands of another person, and the family were thinking of using my company. Says okay. At that stage, I agreed to go to the family house and sit with Dad, and the young man who sadly life was taken was his mother role, wasn't his biological mum, it was a stepmom. And then you walk into a room and you are seeing mum, dad, brother, sister, grandmother. Then you've got great grandmother.
Yeah.
And you could potentially even have great-great-grandmother. So you could be on, if you include the life of the young person, that's taken 5 generations.
Wow.
And I'm like, as we said, we're going to keep it real. I found myself, I don't know if I can do this, because I'm being asked, well, you know, this is what's happened and we need an answer from you. How do we go about planning this and planning that? I was like, I had to sit there and I had to just stop, take a breath and just think. And there was times when I was asked questions and I said, can't answer you right now. Let me go away. Let me have a think about what you're asking me and let me come back to you. Thankfully, by the grace of God, we delivered on that service. But that then led me into knowing that sadly this wasn't going to be the first experience I was going to have with a family who'd sadly lost a child, and being the owner of the company, the likelihood is going to be we were going to be approached. So I'm in a meeting and I'm sitting with another family, again, a few months later. Family are not religious, they don't go to church, so they want to keep it real service for their loved one. And then I've got to sit there and I've got to think, who am I going to reach out to come and help this family? That's when my role with Pastor Carver, Dr. Carver and Pastor Robin started. And I spoke to them and I said to the family, may I have somebody that I can think of that you may be able to work with, but let me have a conversation with them. And I remember ringing Robin and Carver and I told them who I was, because we'd met previously way before I did this, what I did. And I says, I've got a family and I need some help. I'm saying to you, I need some help. So Pastor Robin and Pastor Carver agreed. We met and we sat down and we said what we were going to do and how we was going to support the family. Subsequently, we came together. And that's how, we have to say, that wasn't me acting as a funeral director. That was me as Sharon, knowing I've got to reach out to the people who got brought into my life.
Yeah.
And when he brought Pastor Robin and Pastor Carver in my life years and years and years ago, he knew that our steps were going to be ordered as to what we were going to do in the future. Okay. And then lo and behold, we came together. And since then, we have been working together. Pastor Nathan, I remember being on a service with Pastor Robin and got introduced to yourself. That's how we got introduced, sadly again, at the hands of another young man whose life was taken. And I remember us sitting down and trying to work out how we're going to keep the young people on the Celebration of Life Day engaged. As much as they're going to have their funeral and they've all gone out and they've kitted themselves up and they've got themselves the latest designer outfit, their hair's looking sharp, everything's looking fresh and everything don't stand on my trainers because, I want them to stay white.
Yeah.
We've got to understand, we've got to keep them engaged.
That's right.
To make them understand this is real.
Yeah.
This is real. I would love to, if you want me to keep it real, I'd love to get a group of young people, take them to my premises, open my fridge door and let them know anybody you see lying here will never do that and say, let me out.
True.
Everybody who you are lying here, this is no joke.
Yeah.
This is no joke. So understand the ramifications of what you are thinking that you're out there doing. Because nobody's ever knocked on their casket or a coffin or wherever their family decide to lay them to rest in and say, bit of a joke, come on, let's go. Let's wake me up. I've woken up.
Wow.
You sit down, I've sat down several times with family members who are genuinely, not that they're in denial, did not know. Yeah. Did not know that their family member who's sadly in my care was involved in certain things. Yeah. Because the child presented themselves in a way that they didn't want their family to know what they were involved with. We had this recently, haven't we? Yeah. We've had this where we've had to sit down there and say to a family member, this is the real of what your child was involved in. And we have to try and make sure that we work with them and try and make sure we keep it totally real. Very hard journey to do. But it's a one that I think for me and my journey, I have been so blessed to have the likes of everybody around this table in my life and and willing to come on board with me and my company to be able to elevate us and to do what we do out there in the community.
Yeah.
Because, and there's moments when we're in a service, we've all been in a service together, and something's come up and we just had to change and go in a different direction. Because we feel the energy is going in a different direction, and we feel that we have to take it in that direction. Yeah. We've been at Graveside. I remember recently we've been at a Graveside and a microphone's been on, and we said, you know what, we could start to see the young people disband, and we said, come back, come on back. And we brought them back to the Graveside, and we even said to them, pick up the shovel and start, understand what, understand it. This is not a time for you to all go off and start huddle together in your groups. We're mindful that there are issues going on in and amongst at the Graveside, and we're dealing with that. But we're saying stay focused and stay, and they kind of get it, don't they? We spoke about this, didn't we?
Yeah. We had to have a whole debrief about it, innit? Because it was so intense. I don't know how everyone else feels, but Sharon, you said something so deep, and I feel like we need to go back to it.
Go on.
In terms of opening you've never, in years of service, heard the fridge door knock.
Yeah. It will never happen.
I think that's so deep.
It's sobering. And I think that message, and I think when we've spoken on the phone and we've talked, and you lost for words, because you're thinking, when will they get it? With what you've said there is that's a sobering reality that your friends are not coming back.
I'm deeply pained from hearing what Sharon says. So that aspect, then when we go, and this I've had this book for 30 odd years. It's my committal book, my funeral committal. And when it says, and now to the loving care of our Heavenly Father, we commit the spirit of this departed, whatever the child's name is, body, dust to dust, ashes to ashes. I don't want to bury any more young people who are dying because of violence. How hardcore do we need to be? Because you know what? We can't tiptoe around this with young people. No. We have to, I'm sensing we have to, almost those who are dead now, their voices are absent from human, apart from if they're and some of their friends have them on video clips when they were alive.
But they're absent now.
And I'm thinking, God, how do we deal with this now? And I was talking to a Muslim young man, and I said, Alhamdulillah, what does that mean to you in relation to your friend that is dead? So all of them who come to church or to the mosque, there's something about what we need to be saying as workers, pastor, youth workers, those who have what we have. There needs to be a unity to go hard in, because you know what? That's hard. That fridge door,
I think it's
that young person that is cold, rigor mortis is gone, everything is gone, blood is semi-congealed, and they're there. And I'm thinking, we are in a very critical period of time, because we have the next generation that's coming up who are on it. I looked at some video clips recently, and Robin sent it to me. Everyone's doing and hard.
Yep.
And I'm saying to God, you know what, Almighty, I'm going to be hardcore for this until I depart here, because we need to pull them out and let us front them. Really,
there has to be like some kind of training or cultural competency, because many churches or mosques are just not equipped to understand what is actually coming in terms of the people, the type of care, the type of attention they're going to need.
Break that down.
With a family we're supporting, they wanted to go with their kind of like family pastor, family church.
Right.
And then like, it was only like, and I'm trying my hardest to get around and trying to speak to the individuals that are involved. And like a day or so before the funeral, I had to have like a real frank conversation with like the pastor, the family, and said, can I just explain to you what is actually coming tomorrow? And it's like the shock horror from a pastoral ministers, they was like in shock, like, oh, we didn't even know. Because they're probably dealing with grandma that goes to the church, but just not having no context of like the type of young person and the friends and the issues that are happening within the community. And it just puts everyone at risk because you're just not understanding. And then what actually happened is, and that's why what Carver is saying is important, is you have to back this thing up, because what actually happened, which was a shame, was that certain families come with a lot of intimidation and want the things done their way, and you have to be able to hold the line.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that line didn't get held.
And so
like,
we had,
and they just get intimidated. It's like, okay, do what you want to do. Then before you know it, they've gone off schedule off the program. It's like, no, you got to ring it back in. You got to say no, kind of thing.
and I think that's why, and I come back to Sharon, because I know, because of your experiences and working with the communities that we're talking about, it takes a certain character, it takes a certain strength to be able to turn to a mom or to a grandma and say, no, this is how this is going to go. And I've seen you in action. You're very firm. No, this is how this is going to go.
We've got a name for that.
We've got a name for that. Have we got can I share? Can we know? Oh. we won't say that out loud. We won't say that out loud. But why? The reason why I'm pressing a little bit harder, because I want people to know, like, the activities. Sharon, when a child dies and they're in your care, what things are you having to do? Tell us what you have to do, because I think people have got a very different picture of how this goes.
Yeah. The things that we have to do, let's talk about, first of all, the care of that child. Depends, again, as I always say, the nature of how the young person or the individual's life has been lost. Even before the individual comes into our care, I'm kind of got a good idea what the state of their body is going to be like.
Okay.
So, and then it's confirmed definitely when the individual comes into our care. So I've then got to sit there with a parent that says, I want to see my child again. Because in that parent's mind, they're closing their eyes and they're seeing their child how they last saw them when they walked out the door, or how they look in the picture that they've got hanging up in their bedroom or in the house or wherever on their phone. Because, you know, by now the child who's been lost is on their phone and they're looking at that child. And they turn the phone to me and say, this is what my child looks like. And I know that what your child looks like on that picture, the reality of what who I have in my care, and I definitely know without categorically can say to you without a shadow of a doubt that it is your child, but they don't look like that. I've got to get them over, coming to terms with that. Okay. There's another reason why I say that, to say this. I have been asked by family members when we get to the stage of the day of the service, if the loved one is viewable, can we open the coffin? Because, as you know, us as Afro-Caribbean, no matter how old the person is, they want to say, you need to view. I've had to stop and I say to families, no. I have to be very careful. I don't go and say no. I have to be very careful how that message is delivered, because I know if that casket is opened and the friends, and especially if you have a loved one who was taken and their friends were around at the time, the sheer anger, the sheer tension that could be riled up by them seeing their loved one in the coffin could trigger something else going on. That's straight away.
Of course. Because
you've seen, I've seen families come into our chapel of rest and they've been joined by the people who were with the individual at the time when they sadly passed away, and I see a clenched fist. So much the clenched fist that if the person could, blood would be actually be flowing from their hands because of how tense that they are. I see people, you can see the anger, you can see the living. It's you don't hear a cry because these are young people, so they ain't gonna cry out. But you can literally see that something inside is rumbling in their belly, and I have to try and go into that chapel and calm that down.
Yeah.
And try and make them stay focused of spend this time with your friend and have these intimate moments with them if they're in a position to do so. That's those that are in a position to be viewed. Again, you've got those that can't be viewed. Not because I've advised them not to view because of the anger, but because they're just, as I said, the picture that's on mum, dad's, grandma's, brother, sister's phone, the picture that's out there on social media, that's because obviously we know when somebody passes, their friends are going to put everything up on their YouTube, and as I like to say, their Facebook and all of that, whatever else social media platform that they're on. But that is not what they're going to see.
At all.
Okay. You then have to deal with the reality of, as I said, the parent. So I sit there and depend upon the age of the individual that sadly passed. I would think, well, I remember what my son was doing. Your child is never going to be able to. They're not going to have a prom.
No.
Because now we're living in it where your end of school is a prom. They're not going to be learning to drive a car. I say, Mom, Dad, look, I passed my test today. They're not going to have to talk to their parents about the issues of, went out with this girl and now I don't like her anymore, and that, and relationships and all of that. They're not going to be able to talk about all of that, and we tune into that and we keep it completely and totally real.
Imagine all what Sharon has just says comes into the space. It comes back to then the day. So this is the journey. There's all of this talking and preparing the trauma that happens to a human body when it passes. I've learned this from working with funeral directing, in particular Sharon, who I've had to explain it, because we have a role to try and explain outside of that conversation sometimes why it's not wise to have a viewing. And how are we going to transmit and communicate that to the rest of the friends and the family? So this is where we're coming full. So it's that journey. And remember, this is what I want people to understand. When someone dies at the other hand of a person, most likely it's a murder inquiry. So that's 3 months, some averaging around 3 months in the coroner's care before. So when we say journey, you're talking 6 months, could be shorter, could be longer.
Absolutely.
So they're waiting just to do culturally what we know, which is a rites of passage. Me want to lay me picnic to rest. Me want to put my son down to rest. But the journey and the trauma and the impact, and then for those that then come and visit, knowing it's not going to be open, that's what was there for some that saw that. And we're in a general, some may want to take a picture, and so there's a lot of stuff that we try and influence, but you can't control. And then all of that is carrying into the day of the funeral.
I think one of the things that people probably don't understand, and I learned this through working alongside Sharon in one of their family meetings, is, and it was very eye-opening to me, is that the post-mortem examination is, I think you used the word, more evasive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I recall you explaining to a family that based on how it's so intrusive and the different types of cuts, that there's going to be a change. And I remember you preparing the family around that. And I just don't think people understand that kind of level of detail of what you have to say. And then moving on to other topics within that same conversation, trying to broker this conversation around safeguarding. And they might have a plan of where they're thinking to do the funeral. But then from intelligence and the data is like, we have to try and advise that location might not be a safe location, because actually, unfortunately, your child has caused so much problems in that area that we wouldn't advise not to.
We did that. We even down to we've worked together, we even when families, because again colour schemes, one of the things that families like say, we're thinking of wearing this particular colour,
not to wear black,
and because being a young person there is we don't want it to be black, we don't want it to be morbid, we don't want it to be this, and we like this colour, and they're saying as an adult, and then when they present a particular colour, you know that if they put that this is the colour that they want everybody to be wearing, they're unaware of this, but you have to say to them,
we can't do that.
We wouldn't advise you. I can say, or we say, we wouldn't advise you because, and then it's, well, why not? That's the colour that we like. That's the colour that we want it to be. And then we have to break it down. Oh, I didn't realise. As Pastor Nathan says, we've got to think about the areas.
Yeah.
Even have to think about, we that it's to that degree.
Yeah.
Where you're going to church, what routes you take, what cemetery you're going to go to, understanding as well the elements of who's going to be in attendance at that celebration of life, the homegoing service, because you may be talking about these two gangs, or this section of the community has taken the life of somebody from this section of the community. But if you think that those two are the only two sections of the community is going to be at this celebration of life, you're totally wrong.
Yeah.
I think at one stage we counted about 6 or 7 sections of the community. So you're not dealing with the 2 sections that we're here because of this or because of that. We're dealing with 5 other sections of the community, because you can see, as I said when I said originally, about people pulling away and going and standing up in their own corners because you know that there's that section of the community is there, then we know behind us is there, and it takes we have to work with this amongst us, and it's identifying who that is, and then trying to get to them, to reach out to them, to come back into and say, we're not saying that you're going to be friends, but just stand by each other and stay focused as to why you're here. Stand next to each other and stay focused as to why you're here.
What would you say to parents and carers when it comes to managing the chronic negative behaviours of young people that has led to tragic death for some of them? What would you say to the parents?
I would say to parents, firstly, do you know your child? Who he or she is? Do you know what issues they're going through? Do you know who their friend, where they go, why they go, and so on? It's relational. Because if a parent doesn't have a relationship with their son or daughter, I guarantee that the road will have that relationship with them.
Coming to you, Sharon, what would you say?
As a parent, for me, and I'll go back to one of the things that when my boys was growing up, I don't know the street. I don't know what it's like to grow up when my children were growing up, because every generation we only talk about, in our generation and when we were young it was like this. So my kids had to educate me as to what they were going through, very much as what you just said, Dr. Carver. But I said to my boys, please, anything I need to know, make sure you tell me straight. Tell me the truth, even if I says, because And when I made a decision to have that conversation with my children, I also had to make the decision of the reality of knowing that I'm probably going to hear things that I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to learn to understand how I'm going to accept that. Because if for me to say to them, tell me everything, but then tell them, I don't want to hear that. This is not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to keep it real. It's not going to keep it real.
I have to wrap it because we have run out of time. However, I do want to do one thing, and I want to get your confession. This is Confessions of a Youth Worker, and one of the things that I wanted you to say, even though I feel like, Sharon, you just literally gave me your confession there and then, I want you to tell me something, a confession. It could be inspiring, it could be a challenge, it could be something that is a real bee in your bonnet, but I want you to tell me in the context of what we've been talking about this afternoon, what is your confession as a youth and community worker? Let's put it that way. I'm coming to you, Robin, first.
My bee in the bonnet is, we have to keep this thing real. This is in Call of Duty, where you can reset.
I love it.
This is real stuff. It's real life. It's real pain. And if we started and I'll finish as a person of faith, thus to try and apply unconditional love, to let that unforgiveness turn to forgiveness. And then there can be hope in the midst of what seems very dark.
Thank you. Nathan?
My confession is that this is a hard road. It's a hard journey, and if you're not in here for the love and to actually see transformation of lives, like move up, because that's the thing that's frustrating me, is that people misunderstand the levels of what some of this work really takes, and they don't understand the mental, emotional, and spiritual toll. Because before anyone sees me publicly, the preparation that I go through behind the scenes, my prayer life, my journaling, personal therapy, all these things I have to do just so that I can be in the right place to be able to offer someone something and have something to give them is ridiculous. But people have a false narrative of what this is. And to be honest, it frustrates me. I want to actually swear, like it pisses me off. It pisses me right off because.
Whoop, whoop. Okay.
No, it does, because there's just so much fake.
Okay.
And people just don't get it, and yeah, that's my confession. That it's hard. It's really, really, really hard. And if we really want to try and save some lives, we're gonna have to go to another level.
Thank you.
I confess that God is love, and I confess that I will do my duty as a man of God to walk in faith and action until I depart this world, for the young people who I will engage, wherever that is.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Sharon?
Not gonna try and cop out of this by saying, Pastor Nathan, you said exactly what I was going to say, but you very much touched on what I wanted to say as well. This is not a joke.
Yeah.
We are rewarded for what we do financially, but it could never, ever have any amount of money that's given to us to make us do what we do the way that we do it. Because very easily people will see through the fakeness.
Yeah,
very easy people will see that, you know what, well, it's all about this and all about that. My confession is what I do is genuinely from the pit of my belly, what God has allowed and said to me, this is what I placed you on this earth to do. I don't always get it right. I do, and as I say to people, I have made mistakes, and I will continue to make mistakes. I'm only human. But know that whilst I'm serving and being able to deliver the blessing that the Lord has given to me, I am truly thankful for the privilege of the journeys that I've been able to walk on with all the families that we've been able to walk on with them. But we will always try to make sure, and the point is that we want this just to stop.
Yeah.
We need this to stop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, each and
Thank
every
you.
one of you, for your time this evening talking to me about something that was incredibly difficult but incredibly necessary. And I do think that every one of you, your confessions, everything that you've said and contributed will make a massive difference to the lives of our young people and their families as well. This has been Confessions of a Youth Worker, episode 3. This is an incredibly deep conversation, and I recognise that the impact of losing a child to any kind of violence or at the hands of another so eloquently put by Sharon is something that I think is really hard to recover from. But there's something that stands out to me the most here, and that is that they are not coming back. That children, young people, adults, practitioners, we need to take this seriously. As Sharon said, in all her 30 plus years of doing this work, there has never been a knock on the fridge door. That for me sits incredibly deep. And when Robbins made that sound of the scream of the mother's pain and how they absorb that pain to bring them to a place of comfort, we really have to prepare ourselves for what's to come, but also to recognize the incredible level of compassion, empathy, love and faith that it takes to do the type of work that they do at the very worst end of youth violence.